Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Midwest Mindset. This week's episode, I will be talking about self-confidence, when I didn't have it when I was younger and where I am now, and kind of 5 areas of self-confidence that I focus on or that have helped me build my confidence. And you've heard me say it a number of times on this podcast. One of the things that I am most passionate about is really helping other people find their self-confidence. And so when I was researching topics, I said, boy, this is just something I need to kind of dive back into and tell my story. And so that's what I'm going to do today. So essentially, my biggest fear when I was young is I didn't have self-confidence. And I know a lot of you that are listening are saying, oh, Paul, you were a pretty confident kid and all this stuff. Well, I'm going way back. I'm going back to grade school. Now, I grew up in a big family. I had a lot of uncles and aunts, and my mom had 8 siblings. My dad had 4 siblings. We came from big families, and a lot of times you were supposed to be seen, not heard. And so a lot of times we were just kind of in the wings for many social gatherings, many get-togethers. So when I was really young, I was actually more shy and kind of timid, and I really didn't come into the confident person that I am today until my high school years. And specifically, my aunt and uncle at the time kind of took it upon themselves to invite me to come down to their house in the Twin Cities here for 1 week to help them out with some projects around their house. And I can't tell you what a pivotal point that was for me. Here I was in the middle of all these other cousins and relatives. And they chose me. And for the first time, it felt like I had kind of really, truly been seen. And I think that was a true catalyst. Now, when I really went back and did a little bit of deep thinking, when I talked about this, when I was thinking about this topic, that point in my life had a big transition for me to really see like how good it felt to be more confident than not, right? So when I talk about my why being how I can make other people more self-confident or inspire people to be more self-confident in themselves, both physically and mentally, these are the 5 areas that I really am focusing on. So once again, that was kind of my story back then of what that transition was. Then I really adopted these 5 things. First thing that I adopted is really kind of this whole idea of philosophy, the philosophy of, hey, if I take care of myself, and you hear me say this a lot at the end of every podcast, if I can take care of myself, I'm going to show up more confident and more positive around other people. The quote I have here is, when we improve the way we see ourselves, we improve the way others see us. This is a quote by Vin John, is I believe how you say his name, is a Vietnamese speaker, motivational speaker, does a phenomenal job. Google him or Vin is V-I-N-H. But he says, and I love this, I'm going to say it again, when we improve the way we see ourselves, when we improve the way we think about ourselves, we improve the way others will see us. We show up differently. You hear me say that time and time again, how we show up. If we can show up a little bit different each and every day, people will reflect that. You'll see that you'll be more self-confident in yourself, and you'll be able to help and serve others that much more. So that philosophy of changing yourself, controlling the controllables, really hit home for me. And I love this John Wooden quote. John Wooden is obviously a very successful, or now I passed away, but the most successful NCAA basketball coach for UCLA. Should have been the Minnesota Golden Gophers, but that's a whole nother podcast, a whole nother story. But John Wooden, this successful basketball coach, had this Stoic quote. He said, if you focus on the things you can't control, you'll soon lose control of the things that you can. So let me read that again. If you focus on the things you can't control, you'll soon lose control of the things you can. Right? So what does that mean? It goes back to the Stoic philosophy of controlling the controllables. So that whole idea is we can control how we see ourselves. So if we have that, if we give ourselves a little bit of grace, we give ourselves a little bit of empathy, and we see ourselves in a positive light, we're going to show up in a positive light. So number one for self-confidence is changing the philosophy in your head. Another quote that I'm going to throw on there too is this Vin who I've been following. Your face is the remote control for the emotion that lives in you. So the way you show up, if you smile, it's impossible not to come off as positive and feel good about what you're doing. So I talk about giving a high five. I talk about smiling. The more that we can control the way we look physically, the better we're going to show up mentally. And so that quote, I love that. Your face is the remote control for the emotion that lives in you. And he gives a reference that when we talk about people with resting bitch face, and I know you're listening to this, everybody's had it at one particular time in their life. I've had it. I know I have. But when you have that resting bitch face, how do you think you're coming across to others? But then also internally, you're coming off that way too, right? You're kind of not in the right headspace. You know what I'm talking about. So number one for self-confidence is my philosophy. When I changed my philosophy, when I changed the way I thought about myself, and I had the opportunities when this aunt and uncle kind of gave me that opportunity to show up differently, I jumped at it. It felt good. And when things feel good, I tend to kind of go at it a little bit more. And so that's number one. Number two is be great at what you do. I constantly am trying to learn and trying to read, all these different books that I'm trying to read. That's because I'm trying to be great at what I want to do. I want to be somebody who's inspiring other people. That means I need to read and learn from other people. And there's a great Steve Martin quote, who's a very successful comedian. Now has a great show on, I think it's Apple TV. He and Martin Short are doing one. This hotel or murders in the building, or I believe it is with Martin Short. But anyway, his quote talking about being great at what you do. He said, "Be so good they can't ignore you." He's a stand-up comedian and then went into a movie star, became this huge movie star, and has done so many different things. Hilarious gentleman, but be so good they can't ignore you. That really kind of resonates. Work hard to be great at what you do, because when you work hard and you put the time in, you show up differently and you feel more confident about how you're showing up. So number one is change your philosophy, change your speech. And then number two is be great at what you do. Okay. The focus, the impact that you have on others, all of that will show up if you work on keep trying to be great at what you do. So that's two. Number three is improve your communication skills. That's why I'm watching these YouTube clips on Vin. He's he's actually a magician and a professional speaker. And he gives detailed YouTube videos on how he can show up, how we can show up differently as we're speaking, as I'm learning here. As some of the tips I'm using from him is, once again, make sure that your microphone's plugged in. Make sure you're looking at the camera. Some of the things that I didn't do last week. So I'm learning, I'm tweaking it, I'm getting better each and every day. But improve your communication skills, because the better that you're able to articulate your thoughts, the easier it is to bring that self-confidence and to a conversation, to an interaction with whether it's a social interaction or a professional interaction within your career, your job, or your interactions, like even some of the things that I'm doing now. The better communicator that I've become, the better I show up. And now I'm doing different things. I'm part of a city council. I'm part of a couple of nonprofits. The more I can keep testing myself, keep training myself, the better I'm going to show up. So improve your communication skills. Look for that research. Look for that person that's going to motivate you or help you in that communication. So that's number three. Number four is face your fears, right? This is a topic that keeps coming back. The more that we face our fears, the obstacles, the way, all these different things. But specifically with our self-confidence, when we face our fears, so, whether that's public speaking, and I know some of you are like, oh my gosh, public speaking, I could never do that. But what happens when you do that? If you've done any kind of public speaking, my example is, I got asked after I started this mindset business to come and give a talk at the local middle school, this great program called Hope for Tomorrow. And I was pretty nervous. This was my first gig, my first opportunity. All pro bono, still learning and that type of thing. But it was in front of middle school kids and adults. And I was pretty nervous. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Well, what I did, I worked, I practiced, I prepared. I worked on my communication skills. I worked at being great at what I was going to do. And I showed up. And I actually didn't do that bad. There's plenty of things I would love to take back and do a little differently. But I faced that fear, right? That was a fear of mine, to get up in front of people and actually speak. And I know you say, oh, Paul, you speak all the time. Well, I'm on these videos, right? It's pretty easy just talking to a camera. Nobody's telling me how great I am or how poor I am or how much I really kind of stink, right? At least to my face, you're not. When you're in front of a crowd, you see that interaction. So facing that fear helped me get over that. And now I have probably 2 other things that right now, 2 requests for proposals for speaking engagements that I'm trying to get. But it was a lot easier to throw out those requests for proposals and that idea of trying to get back in speaking again, because I've done it. I faced that fear. I faced kind of my big demon. So number 4, to be more self-confident or show up more self-confident, is face those fears. Okay. You can build, they talk about building the bank of evidence that you are great, right? So that example, after I did it too, I was like, wow, that wasn't so bad after all. But yet going up to it, man, I had anxiety, I had butterflies in my stomach, all those things that we have when we're facing something that we're not used to or that we don't feel comfortable doing. So face those fears. That's number 4. Number 5 is do something for somebody else. This really fits in with what we've been talking about. I said this is my word for the year, is to serve. But I say this quite a bit on the podcast, but serving others makes us feel better about ourselves, makes us feel more self-confident. You've done it before, right? Whether you volunteered at a soup kitchen, whether you've Meals on Wheels, you've volunteered, or Habitat for Humanity, Feed My Starving Children, whatever organization you might have volunteered for. When have you left that and said, wow, that was really miserable. That really didn't feel good, right? So not only does it make you feel good by helping others and volunteering and getting involved, but it also gives you more self-confidence that what you're doing is meaningful and has an impact on others. And that's something that really has been a game changer for me. The more I volunteer, the more I don't ask what's in it for Paul, the better off the more I want to do. And it does feel good. And I actually do feel a lot more self-confident about myself. So that's the 5th one. So once again, change that philosophy. Number 1, when we improve the way we see ourselves, we improve the way others see us. I love that quote. Number 2, be great at what you do. Keep trying, keep learning, keep reading, be the best at what you can do. You'll be more confident. Number 3, improve those communication skills. Hopefully you saw it today, or you heard it today, whether you're listening on a podcast or you're watching this video, is you heard maybe less ums, a few more pauses, different inflections, different pitch in my tone. Some of those things I'm continuing to work on. So improve that communication. That's number 3. Number 4, face those fears. Face that demon, face that something that's challenging you. It might be not as aggressive or intimidating as public speaking. Maybe it's just trying a new thing, trying a guitar or trying a musical instrument or trying a new language. That's something that a lot of people are challenged by, but yet are fearful of. Face those fears, number 4. And number 5, do something for somebody else. Serve others. The more that we serve others makes us feel better about ourselves. When we feel better about ourselves, we feel more self-confident on how we show up. So this was a quick podcast. It went by fast. Hopefully you had some key takeaways. Very excited for next week. We're bringing in a guest next week. The guest is my brother, Jeff. Jeff Tyson will be joining me on the Midwest Mindset. And we are going to have a blast. Like our guest last month with Chad, we are going to riff and talk about some old times. I'm sure it's going to be filled with movie quotes and all kinds of exciting things. But until next time, take care of you and take care of one another. We'll talk soon.